Oh,
We are back, folks. We are back. And I can't hear. Can I hear myself?
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Are your
Maybe that's
headphones
why
unplugged?
I couldn't. I gotta up my volume. I have bad hearing. Bad hearing at this age. It's probably not a good sign. Thank you, Bradley. We're calling into the phones. 646-257-3920. What'd you say?
Too much Nirvana.
I mean, that's probably true. Too much headphone blasting. All right, let's open up the phone lines. Edward Gregorian writes in, I don't know much about stocks, but I feel like whipping out trillions of dollars from the market is not something Trump wants. It's hard to say. We don't live in a shared reality with him anymore. He's essentially been in the OAN net echo chamber since January 6th, ever since he left office, and I think he's just like lost touch with any sense of shared reality since then.
But I also think you could overstate like how much of a break, and I agree with Hal's overall point, and Mexico has basically caused Trump to completely stand down on the tariff threat. Basically says we're going back to the USMCA, and that that's because of the reality we're speaking to. He doesn't want to cause a Great Depression immediately. But I also think like when you see Jamie Dimon say, well, I guess we'll just have to do tariffs and people will just have to live with it. It's because people like Jamie Dimon have so much money, like we've been saying, they don't know what to do with it. So like they can weather a storm and buy up a whole bunch of stuff if that comes to it.
I mean, that's what happened during COVID. And the PPP loans, there was a massive, it exacerbated our income and wealth inequality because of this whole like disaster capitalism thing.
Yeah,
and the shock doctrine. What'd you say?
I said, yeah, because of Fauci.
Duh.
Because Anthony Fauci's getting away with stuff.
Charlie Sheeher, apparently Gavin Newsom decided to have Charlie Kirk on his podcast, wherein he agreed 100% with him on trans issues, including agreeing with the framing of gender-affirming care for minors as chemical castration and mutilation of kids. Effing disgusting. Live for spite, F the right, and F anyone rolling over for them. It's funny you say that, Charlie Sheeher, because we had planned on playing this video. We're going to go through process of elimination for 2028 hopefuls. This is the game that we're playing here. I mean, Gavin Newsom, if he was at the top of your list, is someone on the left. I don't know what to tell you, but I can at the very least educate you now, because this was him on, I guess, the first episode ever of his podcast. He had Charlie Kirk on. And great get. I mean, wow. He's just, engaging in ideas,
That's his first guest? Oh
his first guest on This Is Gavin Newsom, talking about how we should throw trans people under the bus. It's loading.
Over and play dead.
Roll over. In essence, he said that. I think it was a strategic retreat, right? That we need to come back. Trump's starting to implode. His numbers are getting soft. This was even before the tariff issues, et cetera. And then come back and strike when hot. And I immediately, no BS, thought about you, who's just 24/7 flooding the zone, back to my 13-year-old, owning this space, every day getting a convert, every day picking up 1, 2, 10,000 folks, continuing the momentum, coming out of this damn election. And then I'm thinking about, we're going to stand back and watch you run circles around us for 6 months, the next 2 or 3 years, waiting for the moment to finally strike. Struck me as not necessarily the best advice, and it's not a knock on Carville, who I have deep respect for. What's your thoughts?
That's okay. So I don't have to. He's read about one thing in the last 40 years. It's economy's stupid, and boy, he spent down that one line pretty amazingly. But yeah, look, I'll say I don't want to make this about Carville, but I hope you guys retreat.
You kind of like the
more
advice.
For us. There's no opposition. There's no activist spark. You guys are posting these cringe videos on social media.
What are the videos? What are the ones?
I don't know. This cringy? Harmonious thing of 22 senators all saying the same thing.
Didn't like that, yeah.
I didn't like it. Go ahead. Go do more of that.
What do you do?
Please.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor. For example, if you want to, you have an opportunity to run to the middle and seize this mantle. Obviously, you're talking to me about people.
Yeah.
So you right now should come out and be like, you know what? the young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports.
Right.
That shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate it.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness. So it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump? I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you. By the way, as someone with 4 kids, I think
and 2 daughters, right?
2 daughters.
And I have a daughter too.
And a wife that went, God forbid, to Stanford and played on the junior national soccer team, and a guy who got into college only because I was left-handed and could throw a baseball a little bit or hit the ball for a little bit. So I revere sports. And so the issue of fairness is completely legit. And I saw that the last couple of years. Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize. That's
well, weaponize may be pejorative. You're right. But you were able to
shine a light on,
highlight it in a way that, frankly, there are not that many out. We're talking about, I think, NC2A, what, 510,000? No, but I just didn't realize.
It's 890 medals and trophies that we know of in the last 5 years. That's a lot.
No, so let me step back, say completely fair on the issue of fairness. I completely agree. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace.
That 890 number has been basically debunked at this point. And hello, Matt Binder. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you great.
You don't have the right mic though.
But we're mid segment, so we'll come back to you in a sec. But so there is a study that's being pushed around that there are 890 medals in 29 different sports. Some journalists, it was a UN Special Rapporteur report put together by Reem Aslalem, who is an anti-trans, basically TERF activist. She was the special rapporteur for the UN sexual orientation and gender identity panel, essentially. But it's been highly criticized that she's an anti-trans activist and was a part of this regardless. So that's the study that they're citing. That study double counts things as well. But this is the exact kind of Democrat that we absolutely do not need in running in 2028. There have been analyses about the people of exit polls, and this is different than people who stayed home. I think the studies on the folks that stayed home show that the plurality opinion for Democratic partisans who didn't vote last election was that their motivation was because of Gaza. That's why they didn't show up. But for the people that did show up, trans issues was I think, ranked 22nd out of 22 in terms of what motivated their vote. The folks like Gavin Newsom and Democrats like him don't want to change Democratic politics to reorient itself less towards the professional managerial class and more towards the working class. And so what do? Throw trans people under the bus. It's the easiest thing to do. Throw already marginalized people under the bus. Democrats are doing the same thing with immigration. These folks don't have a documented status, so they're easy scapegoats, and they need to kind of live in fear of deportation so they don't advertise their plight in the same way that other groups may. So let's throw immigrants under the bus as well. Newsom really does sound like a guy who once was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. And I don't say that in the good way. So I don't know how that could be interpreted in a good way. But let's get serious about 2028. There really are only 3 emerging options right now that look like they could be acceptable. It's Tim Walz, who looks like he wants to run again. J.B. Pritzker, too, although I still think we need to see more about what he would be offering. Walz is ahead of him advocating for single payer on a podcast recently. And AOC, who's still a long shot, but I think her prospects in the Democratic primary are a lot better than a lot of political scientists seem to indicate, because she has such a broad base of support, and like any woman under 40 sees her as kind of a feminist icon in many ways if they're voting in a Democratic primary. So we shall see. But like the idea that this is his first conversation with Charlie Kirk, there is no reasoning with these people. And this is a case study into how liberalism is incapable of dealing with fascism. He cedes on the issue over the less than 10 NCAA athletes that are participating in sports who are trans. Now, on the high school level, that data is a little less clear, but we know that even states like Utah had passed bans on trans kids in sports, and they had either 0 or 1 kid that was trans and participating in sports in their state. So it's entirely about scapegoating. It's not about fairness. I mean, if it was about fairness, I don't know. It would not be necessarily.
I mean, that stuff can be dealt with by local
the bodies.
Like,
yes.
That's the thing is, like, look, generally speaking, it's overstated the degree to which there's a competitive advantage. That's my assessment of the science.
Yep.
And when there isn't, I think it's part of the bodies of the schools to figure out how fairness can be adjudicated there. I think it is absurd that it's very obvious why it's a national political story, because it's a way to demonize a minority of people.
Yeah, and the competitive advantage first of all, if you talk to a trans woman who takes hormones that comport with her gender identity, it basically flattens out all of the supposed competitive advantages that are discussed. That's much more based on hormone levels, and when you're undergoing treatment that includes hormones, it makes your body much more like the cisgender identity that you're basically transitioning to. That's what the science says, and that's what trans people who have undergone this treatment talk about. I mean, there's this false notion that gender affirming care is just surgeries. That's really not it. But the right likes to focus on it because surgery makes people squeamish. But it's about the hormone therapy that people undergo is as essential. And especially if kids are prepubescent and they're trans, there is no competitive advantage. Then when puberty hits, well, that's why we have things like hormones and puberty blockers that help trans kids transition into the gender that is right for them. And if that care is widely accessible, none of this matters. If we had a society that actually took trans care seriously and made it widely accessible to everybody, the right would have no leg to stand on because these therapies work for people and there is no inherent competitive advantage. But they use, and it's not a coincidence that the celebrities on the right now, like Riley Gaines or that other girl that got hit with the volleyball, that they're all white girls, right? Because this is a long-standing trope where the right wing hides behind women, and it's usually white women, as a moral justification for their brutality towards another group. So if they hate another group, conservatives will use a white woman or a white girl as a avatar for the purity that they're attempting to protect from the hordes of Black people, of indigenous people. I mean, the Palestinians, this is being deployed against them with the atrocity propaganda being used to perpetrate a genocide in Gaza. But it's also being used towards trans people right now. That a trans woman is inherently going to rape or sexually assault a girl in the bathroom or hurt her physically within sports competition. It's ridiculous. But that is what they're trying to deploy there, because you know what? We've seen ample evidence that men do not need to change their gender identity or dress in a gender dress in the opposite gender, right, as a subterfuge to sexually assault women. They can just do it out in the open. They could, say, be at a Republican conference and potentially, allegedly, roofie a woman there, take her cell phone, block the door, sexually assault her. She goes to the police, tells a nurse that there was maybe something in her drink. And then that guy can become Secretary of Defense. This is the party that cares about protecting women and girls. Give me a break. They care about reinforcing who gets to be a woman because in their mind, womanhood is defined by manhood. It's defined by manhood both in the biological sense. If you are able to carry my child, that is the woman that you get to be a woman. And it's also defined in the sense of like what men view as sexually desirable. That's who women get to be. And again, there are Black women and women of color that bear the brunt of this as well. Why was the right obsessed with the conspiracy theories about Michelle Obama being a man? It's the same thing. Conservative control defining what womanhood is, and it's extended into this anti-trans hatred as well. And Gavin Newsom there is legitimizing it. Bye-bye. Disqualified from being taken seriously by the base, in my view, as a real presidential contender in 2028. We have way better people that we could be actually supporting, and Newsom is one of the worst ones that's vying for that position right now. And now we have Matt Binder. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for listening as I ranted there. Any thoughts on that front?
No, I agree. It's pretty amazing that he's chosen, first of all, that Charlie Kirk would be his first guest, and then the issues they talked about to begin with. Like, he's asking Charlie Kirk for advice. Like, yeah. That's the guy that we're gonna run, or the Dems are gonna run. Give me a break.
Right.
I mean,
and I mean, it's amazing that he can, when he wants to be more adversarial. He did those bizarre debates with Ron DeSantis, if you recall, during the 2024 race. He was kind of trying to be waiting in the wings, and I think Nancy Pelosi favored him as the person who would be the candidate and not Kamala Harris in the end if Biden were to croak or have to step aside, which is what happened. So he was doing these odd audition tapes debating Ron DeSantis on Fox News, and it ended up really just like diminishing both of them because, one, he's not the president, Newsom. He's not, Trump's going to be the nominee. Why are you debating Ron DeSantis? But it was even worse for DeSantis. It's like, but Newsom isn't the president. You're trying to be president. Why are you debating him? Biden is the president. It made them both look like they were like almost on the JV squad doing what the folks above them were supposed to be doing. It was a weird like media obsessed kind of strategy by both of them.
Right. It was like two governors literally doing like a YouTube debate.
Right.
It's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, come on. I'm surprised it wasn't like 5 hours long, honestly. And they weren't talking while playing Fortnite with each other. I mean, the whole thing is extra hilarious. It's a great point you just brought up about how like Gavin Newsom had a completely different bravado when he was doing those debates, because it just shows like what a loser this guy is. He was Mr. Tough Guy during the lead up to the 2024 election, because he thought there was an opening there for him. And then he saw the results of the election, and I guess like he thinks the electorate is different. He's probably fallen for that same shit that, like, honestly, it sounds like he fell for the Trump has a mandate bullshit. And
the guy
now
that
he's
didn't
like,
even get 50% apparently has a mandate, and we
Right.
have to retreat from all our positions.
Right. That's like how he approached this conversation with Charlie Kirk. Like, hey, Charlie, give me some advice because you guys did everything right. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous. Did the Trump campaign do things right? I mean, obviously they won, but like, what do you want from Charlie Kirk? He's going to give you like the new policy position. And like, that's exactly what he was asking for, pretty much, by talking by segueing directly from that into the issue of whether trans people are allowed to play sports or not. And it's like
amazing.
And like, really, like, remember that in most of these cases, they are talking about kids. Like, they are talking about that they want you to come out on a public platform and denounce people who are under the age of 18, which, as far as I've always come to know them as, children. They want you to humiliate individual children for being trans on a public stage. That's what they're asking for. And you know what? If they're 19 or 20 and we're talking about like someone who's like a sophomore or junior in college or whatever, I'm sorry, they're still kids to me. I'm old enough where those are still children.
Right. It's insane. like a Midwest Ranch writes in, I'll say it again, fear-mongering over trans people, especially trans women, is rooted in white supremacy. Violence and against and subjugating certain groups of people in the name of protecting white women goes back to slavery and Jim Crow laws. That's a more succinct explanation of what I was saying earlier. It's the combination of the two, of white supremacy, which is interlinked with misogyny and religious fundamentalism. These are all just systems of control and domination that work hand in hand with one another and ultimately serve capitalism because it keeps us divided as opposed to connected. But let's take a call really quickly. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it is Kowalski from Nebraska. Sorry, I'm building a levee, so I had my phone muted.
Oh, well, I didn't, it's 50-50 whether or not you have something to share with the audience or you're just listening along as you're working. But I figured we needed to talk to our farm correspondent after all these tariffs have been affecting American farms. And also, for what it's worth, the cutting of USAID, which also helps keep a lot of farmers in business a bit, because these are subsidies for American farmers to produce food that goes overseas where folks are starving and are malnourished.
Well, it's important to remember Trump loves us. It's just a little bit of pain in the short term. It'll all be fine. Stay the course. Fertilizer's fake. The birds aren't dying. That is our mantra for the next 4 years.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah. Now the USAID stuff and a lot of the, like with SNAP cuts and whatnot, these are going to hurt farmers, but it is predominantly marginal. You're talking like 2.5%, 5% of the industry. Still enough to like impact us negatively, but I think the bigger impact for this financially, don't get me wrong, it's going to kill a lot of our soft power. Isn't it great when there's a famine and then you get this bag of food that with the USA emblem on it? That doesn't resonate with people for decades. But no, the big issue, as I see it, is going to be a cut in regulations, because we could expect to see degrading of our water supplies unless there's action taken at the state level. Midwest probably will be less impacted by this, just from historical aspects and the influence of the hunting industry. Those guys will sue. But one of the bigger problems, as I see it, is going to be the EPA's enforcement of the ethanol standard. That could really suck to grain producers. In my opinion, it would mean we wouldn't be able to break even. So it would just be like poverty. But one of the big things I wanted to call in about was the tariff war with Canada. I remember, or you had mentioned the potash.
Yes.
Potash is a fertilizer that, if I recall correctly, we basically have to use ancient lake beds. You mine these and you get potash. It's a pretty essential nutrient to keep the soil replenished, especially with how much we extract off the soil these days. There's only a few places on the planet you can get it. Canada's one of the big ones. The other two big ones are in Russia and Belarus, which are currently sanctioned into oblivion. So Canada is the only place you can get it. We were working on a place in the African Sahel near the greater Lake Chad basin, but actually without USAID, I believe we had to pull out of the region. So just years of investment gone overnight with the stroke of a pen because, idiots. Not bitter at all about that one. So these little prices will keep like nickeling and diming us. Is it going to be catastrophic? No, but it is going to keep hitting tighter and tighter margins, making farming more and more expensive, less production, more insecurity, more vulnerable to any disaster. Another big one is going to be the impact on oil. Now, the U.S. Produces all of the oil it needs domestically, sort of. If you think of a spectrum on left to right going from sweet to sour, up and down going from light to heavy for crude. These are just metrics you use to measure crude. If it's heavy, it sinks in water. If it's light, it floats on water. refining light and sweet, which is what we get from American fracking, is very easy to make gasoline, but it's very difficult to get construction materials like asphalt. That's why we trade with the Canadians, who have heavy and sour crude, and the Mexicans, who have heavy and sour crude. By trading with these two, you don't have as big of a transportation cost, and you're not harming port logistics. So it's really good for us to just trade with our neighbors on this. And without it, it will mean an increase in our construction costs and an increase in their transportation costs for no gain.
Yeah.
It's stupid stuff like this that will just keep nickeling and diming the economy, and, it hurts employment. If that stuff goes up by 5%, expect thousands to be unemployed.
And I mean, in terms of like the lumber and the tariffs that the Trump administration is saying that they're placing on 25% of Canadian imports, basically their solution is that we should cut down our national forests, which is that's just Bolsonaro politics, right? Like, I mean, although the Amazon rainforest has a unique sense of like importance in our ecosystem, maybe that's different than our national forests, it still is just an absolute outrage that this is basically for no reason to subsidize the whims of Donald Trump and the fact that he read a McKinley biography, I guess the last book he's read, probably, or one of the only ones he's read in his life. One? I wonder what it is, or which weird white supremacist influencer got in his head about McKinley. Like, it's so pointless. That's the thing that is just so shocking about this moment with these tariffs. It's pointless. It's just about kind of Trump's personal ego and his theory about our trading partners that is not based in any sense of reality.
We might have lost him.
We lost Kowalski?
Oh.
We did. All right. Well, thank Caleb from Iowa says, please clip the Kowalski segment. I want to send it to some folks. We will do that. Always love a farm report. Commentary says, my guess is Trump hasn't finished reading the McKinley biography. I don't know. I mean, I think
there's not one. I'm trying to find a source on McKinley. Like, it's just one of his guys has some sort of like academic interest in McKinley. It's bizarre to me, but it's like some sort of Gilded Age nostalgia.
Right. I mean, and when I think he probably knows how the Gilded Age ended. I think the point is that he doesn't really care. Like, Trump is nearing the end of his life. He's motivated by revenge and getting rich, and that's basically all it is.
This is basically what they're doing right now, is just the conservative New Deal or the anti-New Deal, going right back to the period before the Gilded Age. Like, the conservative movement has, from the DuPonts organizing against the New Deal at the time, through John Birch, through Reagan and Nixon. Like, this is what they've always been about, which is destroying the state capacity that was constructed in the wake of the Great Depression.
Right. Or you mean under the King FDR's rule?
Well, that's the thing, is like, he's a king, but also that was pretty much, the New Deal was just a bunch of startups, says Mark Andreesen, which is, not how I've ever seen it described, but whatever.
Hamilton was a startup bro.
Yeah, I mean, he moved fast and broke things.
Creating the Treasury Department.
I mean, when you really think about it, AI is our new treasury. AI is our new god. Let's take another call. Calling from a 413 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Or actually, sorry, I misread the wrong one. Calling from a 514 area code.
Hello?
Hi, 514. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's Jean from Montreal.
John from Montreal. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I mean, how you doing over there? Our new greatest enemy state, Canada.
It's very panicky over here.
A little bit of feedback on your mic, by the way, if you don't mind.
Sorry about that.
Take me off speaker or off headphones.
There's no real rhyme or reason to what this administration is doing. And I think a lot of the damage he's doing is going to be irreversible, at least on the international stage. Not respecting a lot of the very same trade agreements that he signed into law, not respecting war treaties that he has with Ukraine, I think is. I think the rest of the world is going to have a very big problem with trusting the American populace to elect leaders moving forward that kind of agree with the rule of law that's been set by decades and decades of leadership. But more importantly, I think this era in American politics might lead to very broad constitutional reforms. I think Trump is. I think Trump is just part of a bigger problem. Whether it's the two-party system, whether it's money in politics, whether it's very partisan Supreme Court. I think he's just exposing a lot of the flaws within the Constitution. And I mean, he's a businessman that's been taking advantage of loopholes in his businesses for decades. It's not really surprising that now that he has access to unfettered power in government, he's doing the same thing. My question is how long before massive constitutional reform happens, or is it really ever going to happen?
What kind of constitutional reform do you mean?
Well, for one, I think the Supreme Court not being balanced, not having term limits, same thing with Congress, same thing with money in politics. I think those are things that, as long as they're part of the American political system, another Trump might happen later on.
Well, that's the concern, right? I mean, I guess it's specifically the administrative state gutting. It's like, who does this set things up for? And in the same way that, we were critical of Obama for not repealing like the military authorization that was powers that were given to Bush during the war on terror. This is the kind of thing that where you continue to leave the door open and the expansion of executive power. It just means that a demagogue can come in and use those powers for bad.
The question of how long it's going to take is an entirely new generation of Democrats.
Yeah.
No good showing or even primarying people out is going to turn this around in a midterm. You have too many people controlled that don't actually give a shit about what's happening, really. They need to show that they care, but they and their donors are fine with a lot of what's happening. So, what's going to... Ultimately, yes, we need to get back to a place like we were pre-civil rights era, where people were looking at the courts and the Senate as, oh, these are legacies of a slaveholder's government that is just very obviously meant to check the masses of people when they have a good idea for a better way of life. And we still have Democrats who look up to Supreme Court justices and senators, frankly. And even like the best leftist in power in the country right now is a Senate institutionalist in Bernie Sanders. So we have a long way to go before we're able to do any of that stuff. And it's horrifying because you're seeing all this stuff that's been torn down. It needs to be reconstructed, and there is no actual constructors besides maybe Bernie and a few others. I mean, Elizabeth Warren construct the CFPB. You're going to need to propose government action on this stuff, and the Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are shy about that because they're neoliberals.
Exactly right, and it would need. I think I said this about maybe just some of my pessimism about the next 4 years. Is like it's very easy to break things, and Trump is doing that and showing the way that you can wield presidential power and test the limits that we've been told are untestable by democratic institutionalists for quite a while. So whoever gets in there in 2028, if they can, would need to be somebody that acts with the respective urgency that this requires and acts with the same amount of force, but on a building side of things that Donald Trump is engaging in. And that's why we played that clip of Tim Walz yesterday, because that's what he's basically saying there, is that you acquire political capital to burn it. And the reality is that Democrats have acquired political capital to satiate their base, as opposed to burning it while really delivering on political capital for their donors.
And burning it should be looked at as like investing in a world that is more conducive to the one that will be better for you in the future. Like, and to put it in concrete terms, from Democrats from Jimmy Carter to Bill Clinton said, fuck those unions. They are actually a problem for progress in this country. They're a problem for our economic priorities. They get in the way of our politics. That they don't let people cook. And what have we seen? Them be decimated in part by Reagan, I mean, mainly like Reagan, Patco strike and everything that's fallen out since then. But that was enabled by those Democrats saying, you know what, maybe there's something to it. And that has led to a electoral situation where, all of a sudden the working class is even less organized. They're even more prone to like right-wing misinformation. We have this sort of fixation that we can only look at the internet and Daily Wire or whatever the fuck. No. The base of the party has been decimated. And it's like, we're hoping to try to get those numbers back slightly, but I'm sorry, like, we're not getting back to like 1975 unionization levels, and we're all fucked because of it.
Yeah. And
is there, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, to add to his point, the Obama coalition was very, very fractured because of these failed promises, which could have led us to success long term. But
is there a possibility for an advent of a third party? Because I do feel like there are some Democrats that are kind of have to toe the line, but ideologically probably aren't neo-liberals or neo.
I don't think in the immediate.
Democrats.
I think what needs to happen is a independent
populist party.
So there needs to be agnosticism towards the ballot line. If you can get on as a Republican, like Aaron Kowalski, the farmer who called in earlier to do it, get power no matter how you do it. But there does need to be some, and we're heading in the wrong direction on this with AOC saying we're not going to be insurgents anymore. Well, she can do that, and good luck to her. And I hope she gets climbs very high in the party. But in terms of like what we need to do, there needs to be some kind of line in terms of supporting shitty ass Democrats that are going to support crypto in Israel and the type of people who we need to get into power right now. And I'm not sure, I would like to see more from Bernie on that front, because working within the party, there needs to be some kind of fence, at least. Look, I still think running in Democratic primaries is a absolute must, but there needs to be an understanding that most of this party is corrupt, and from the head down, it's going to rot like a fish.
It does feel like Bernie being pushed out in 2016 was the start of a precipitous decline within the Democratic base.
Yeah.
I just at his advanced age, like what kind of, rallying behind Bernie. I'm from Canada. I'm all for it. He advocates a lot of the stuff that we get to enjoy here, and I mean, he seems like the most common sense politician out there, but Bernie is not a party. Bernie is an individual who, I mean, is doing the great work, but what's after Bernie?
I know. Well, that's the, gotta get
We need people to be serious about winning power.
Yeah.
Like Bernie was, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And Robin Wansley, independent Democrat in Minneapolis City Council. And the truth is, she works with Democrats all the time. She's trying to get Omar Fateh elected mayor, because that's just the reality of politics right now. And so there's like, I think you cannot understate the problems with the Democratic Party, but also there's a risk of overcorrecting, saying we can't work with them at all. And it's like, well, play Cyberpunk 2077, because there's nothing. That's how the system is set up right now.
Yeah. Appreciate the call.
Well,
Thanks so much.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Chris Burdick says, you're spot on that it's easy to break things, and the Democrats have shown time and time again they have little or no interest in rebuilding those things once they're broken. They have this militant fetish for defending the status quo no matter how degraded it is. It's like they view their own privilege as a Jenga tower, and they're terrified that the slightest change might cause it to collapse. Well said. This is a little bit of field of that, but what should we do first? Should we do this Axelrod thing, or should we do the Cuomo stuff? What do you think, Bradley?
Oh, let's do Cuomo.
All right, we'll start with Cuomo. We'll do Gillibrand and then Cuomo kind of in the same segment.
For Haxel.
Ooh, we got multiple Cuomo segments. Beautiful. Well, we're combining them, but ooh.
No, we are combining this into an overall whole picture here, right? So let me take you back to the 2020 primary, when there was a senator from New York who thought maybe she could be the nominee for president, or at the very least she would run for office and it would raise her profile. Her name is Kirsten Gillibrand. She people may forget this. It's like kind of like the Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham once ran for president against Donald Trump in 2016 and called him a xenophobe. Kirsten Gillibrand ran for president in 2020, and she was really running as the Me Too candidate. This was her brand. She led the charge to oust Al Franken from the Senate. Now, I'm of the opinion that Al Franken made some mistakes. I think he should apologize for those mistakes. I think he has, right? And I believe that people can be rehabilitated if the crimes that he's being accused of aren't things like, I don't know, approaching the Harvey Weinstein or forcible rape or things like that, where I'm like, that's beyond the pale, forcible sexual assault. When folks show that they've apologized. I mean, I think about Andrew Callahan, right, who's apologized. They should have a path. This is just a journalist, but they should have a path forward to redemption. I really believe that as someone on the left. But the hypocrisy of running as the Me Too candidate and saying we have to get rid of Al Franken, and then to hear this from Kirsten Gillibrand when Andrew Cuomo did way, way worse. It's unimaginable.
Multiple women accused him of sexual harassment over a range of things. He denied, deflected, blamed it on being Italian. His current lawyer is literally currently out there defending their actions that are still ongoing, where they're looking to get the gynecologist reports on one of his accusers to prove that he didn't do something. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yep. And
there's been no attempt at redemption. There's been no culpability, nothing.
Nope. And here's Kirsten Gillibrand being asked about Andrew Cuomo announcing that he's officially running for mayor.
Given the work that you've done on the Me Too front, Andrew Cuomo is now in the mayor's race. Do you think that's good for New York? Would you support him if he's the nominee?
Look, I've known Andrew Cuomo for decades, and he has a lot of talent as an executive. He's been a very strong governor and done very good things for New York. But he has admitted and he has said he's made mistakes, and mistakes that he regrets, and serious mistakes. So it's really up to the voters. This is a country that believes in second chances, so it's up to New York voters to decide if he should get a second chance to serve.
What would your recommendation be to those voters?
It's up to New York voters. It's not up to me.
Oh, it's not up to you. It was up to her about the whole Al Franken thing, by the way. People should look.
I wonder what he thinks of all this. I mean, amazing.
I'm sure he's enraged. I mean, she was a complete opportunist on that front, and I think it's actually pretty gross because I don't think that sexual assault should be used as a cheap political tactic. Frankly, it should be a principle for somebody like herself, especially who stuck her neck out there. But people should look up Lindsey Boylan, who is one of the accusers, has been doing an interviews publicly about what she went through. And I mean, to have her own senator, Kirsten Gillibrand, who says this is an issue that she cares deeply about, deflect on this question, it's just outrageous. But right. Cuomo's tentacles are all over the state, right? Like, this was part of what was so intractable about him, is that he had a bunch of corrupt cronies, including some who got actually indicted on corruption charges, who he dealt with. He also did backroom deals with the IDC and fostered this kind of independent Democratic caucus that functioned as Republicans, which killed legislation, that progressive legislation throughout his tenure as governor, because there were voters that were going to the ballot box voting for their state representative and voting for somebody that had a D next to their name, but who would always vote with Republicans. Andrew Cuomo created that situation.
That's what's so frustrating is, look, I think he shouldn't, he's a pig who should probably in jail for being abusive to people. The IDC thing, like that Gillibrand can say he did a lot of good for people in the state of New York. No, he was anti-pre-K. He was so horrible, and the IDC is the perfect embodiment of that sort of corruption, which is a corruption that has the Democrats below the Republicans in approval rating right now because they are secret fucking Republicans. Gillibrand voted alongside every Republican senator and like 18 more of her colleagues to weaken rules about crypto.
She's been leading the way on crypto. It was yesterday. She is so in bed with really like this is a huge problem in New York and New Jersey because it's proximity to Wall Street, which has all of these kind of financial entanglements with cryptocurrency right now. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Binder, but can you think of one Democratic senator who's been more pro-crypto than Kirsten Gillibrand?
In terms of policy, probably not. In terms of vocally, Richie Torres is up there.
Well, he's in the House. He's in the House. But in terms of our senators, but he's
Senate,
also from New York.
No,
Booker, the same thing. But Booker's another guy. Booker was floating crypto as good for unbanked minority communities.
Right.
Like these people are absolute fucking jokes.
Yeah.
They don't even know anything about it. They're just following what they've heard from lobbyists who claim this is the future.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's very similar to what you see right now, where everyone's like, "Oh, you listen to all these, all these tech geniuses warn you about the dangers of AI, and we need to prepare." And they're like, "Why isn't anyone taking this seriously?" Well, it's because most people remember what we heard all the other times these tech losers said to, focus all your energy on this because this is the future. It's just them trying to sell their product to enrich themselves. It's all bullshit.
And I mean, the backlash to Me Too that we're living through right now is horrific, in large part because Republicans are, full on assaulting people's rights, particularly young women who are disproportionately get most of abortion care, for instance. But the cynical deployment of these sorts of issues has not helped them.
No.
Has not helped the actual desire for justice that underwrote them and made them so useful to politicians like Kirsten Gillibrand 8 years ago. And it's sick that they do that stuff.
And I mean, honestly, I can't think of anyone from that race who was like more like opportunist than her, honestly. Like, we may have different policies with a lot of the people that ran, but they went back to doing what they do and were visible and whatever. Again, we might disagree, but that's the case. She went from leading the charge for a number of things, especially in terms of helping mothers, I remember. And then there was like her bill, I forgot what exactly the bill was, but I do remember her spotlighted bill that she was all gung-ho for. She didn't even show up for the vote for it after she realized she wasn't going to become president of the United States. She completely dropped out. She completely disappeared. She completely gave up on apparently everything but serving the lobbyists, like the crypto lobby. There's no one who went from advocating for something, against we might disagree with what it was, but there's no one who went from advocating for something they claim to believe in to saying F it the second they realized they were no longer going to be president.
And this is why I get triggered by white feminism. And I don't mean feminism that is just white women. It's like a definition of white feminism that is not intersectional and that is basically about getting yours and leaning in the boardroom. It's exclusionary, and it boils down to this. It becomes opportunistic because she used Me Too to advance her political career and then disposed of it as soon as we entered into an reactionary backlash period against women's rights, which is exactly when we need someone like her to be standing for women's rights, but she used it transactionally. And you can see how that political cowardice cuts across this brand of Democrat. So here's Andrew Cuomo on Stephen A's show on Monday, ahead of his announcement that he's officially running for mayor. Stephen A asked him about progressivism and how to get things done, some generic question. And listen to how he shoehorns an attack on DSA into this answer.
Making government work, making progress, that's what a progressive is all about. It's not about being anti-police. It's not about leaving mentally ill homeless people on the street. It's not about being anti-Semitic. We have this DSA, which spews anti-Semitism, which just releases a toxic chemical into the environment. That's not progressive in my mind.
Can you pull up that RFK tweet from the other day? That sounded identical to what RFK just said.
Right.
I mean, this is the same thing that Zionists in labor did to purge Corbynites out of the party. It's, it's the exact same thing.
This is the guy we're supposed to. This guy was saying how, pointing out that he was grabbing at women and touching them inappropriately against their consent was anti-Italian discrimination. I mean, he really has quite a loose definition of forms of bigotry that serve his interests. I mean, that's just a disgusting smear to say about DSA. The anti-Zionist movement is led in many ways by Jewish Americans. Jewish Americans who are anti-Zionist are at the forefront of criticizing Israel, and they are all not all. Many of them are in DSA too here in the city. But here's HHS Secretary for the Republican administration, RFK Jr. Anti-Semitism, like racism, is a spiritual and moral malady that sickens societies and kills people with lethalities comparable to history's most deadly plagues. In recent years, the censorship and false narratives of woke cancel culture have transformed our great universities into greenhouses. I mean, God, he's really stretching this metaphor. For this deadly and virulent pestilence. Making America healthy means building communities of trust and mutual respect based on speech freedom and open debate. Besides just like the kind of weird attempts to make it under his purview as HHS secretary, and
which would have been laughed out of the room if the previous leader said, yeah, anti-black racism is a health,
right,
which is true.
Yeah, exactly. But it sounds exactly like what Andrew Cuomo said right there. We're really going to do this again. We're going to elect a closet Republican as the mayor. We just did that. And he's right now getting extorted by Donald Trump as a part of his deportation scheme.
The truth is, like, we're going to probably have to confront pretty ugly things about Democratic primary voters, unless Zoran or maybe one of the other lesser progressives.
Don't.
Go.
I was just going to say, don't forget that Andrew Cuomo gave something like hundreds of millions of dollars to Tesla to create a factory up in Buffalo that was supposed to go towards, I believe, the MTA here in New York City. He diverted funds from New York City to give money to Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're going to find out, and this anti-Semitism stuff is going to be more and more pronounced because it's the only thing that they have. And the response isn't to take them seriously as if they actually care about anti-Semitism. It's say, go fuck yourself, you smearing bigot. We want a ceasefire and justice for Palestinians. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that.
And you know what that is? That's Andrew Cuomo taking a shot across the bow at Zoran Mamdani, who I'm sure he's worried about because Zoran is DSA endorsed, obviously, and he's Muslim. And he's getting attack ads already because he had the temerity to stand against the genocide in Gaza. And I really want them to keep tripling down on this. You know, in a city that saw depressed turnout in the Democratic or for the Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris this last election cycle, and you see the polling that shows that I think particularly among Democratic partisans that did not show up, that the position on Gaza was the primary reason. It was the plurality response. I don't know if Cuomo wants to activate that base by reminding people that Zoran is the anti-genocide candidate in the race. But frankly, like, I'm really sick of freaks like this smearing our Muslim brothers and sisters or anybody that, like, maybe from a certain part of the world who, I don't know, doesn't even identify as Muslim, but just because maybe they're Middle Eastern or something like that, automatically depicting them as anti-Semitic. Miss me with that. Like, this is a European export where there was the Spanish Inquisition and the horrors of the Holocaust. Our Middle Eastern friends do not bear the brunt of the genocide committed by the Nazis against the Jewish people. Give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Kyle Klinsky pointed out a poll, and I'm not sure where this is from, but basically shows 59% of Democrats sympathetic with Palestinians compared to 21% sympathetic with the Israelis. That's down from maybe like 2000s where it was like reversed pretty much. Yet George Latimer won, Wesley Bell won, and it wasn't entirely because of lies spread about, Bowman didn't support Biden enough. It's because some people want a Zionist liberal to be in these seats. And I think it's a huge concern. Like, I'm very worried about what it says about Democrats in general if Cuomo is able to win this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest problem is that the majority of these Democrats in these polls who align with, the left or progressives, not everyone is in this political bubble where they are, out there ready to vote in every election. So if they see that, the Democrats are doing what they're doing, they don't go out and vote. But then the hardcore, faithful Democratic establishment base, they do go out and vote, and that's what you get.
Yeah. And that's why Democrats overperform in the midterms, right? But when it comes to the presidential level, they're shocked. And I bought into this too. I thought this would carry over from 2022 into 2024. And I was wrong, right? Because it turns out that Trump activates a different voter base. And also in that 2 years, the Democrats did a horrible genocide. And that caused a lot of people to feel disillusioned. And they thought they could overcome that with abortion. And couldn't work. And of course, the cost of living crisis. Yeah.
Republicans love their party. They are lock in step. They're very happy with what the party is doing right now. So they turn out and vote happily. Whereas on the other side, you have Democrats trying to appeal to a very slim portion of the country. And then you have, the Democrats who support them, go out and vote for them. And then you have the people who are, very, locked into politics, realizing that they have to do what they need to do to make sure the better, the lesser of the evils wins. But then you have the whole portion of people who, are just tuned out, and they don't feel like they need to go out and vote because they're just not politically active, and nothing is appealing to them. And I honestly think that is the vast majority of this country.
100%.
And the Trump voters, the Trump 2024 voters who the Democrats can win are not the people who are who honestly care about politics in the sense of they're super tuned into politics. They hear Reagan's name in the Democratic response, and they're activated to I'm going to look at the Democrats. No,
they can't wait to hear Charlie Kirk talking to Gavin Newsom. Yeah.
yeah. Those people are hardcore MAGA. They are hardcore Republicans. The Trump 2024 voters who can be spoken to are the people who are largely apolitical until every 4 years, who pay no attention to politics on a daily basis, and literally just voted for Trump because he promised them things that would make their life easier or better. It doesn't matter that he lied. He promised it to them. And because they don't, they're not active in politics, they heard what he said, and it spoke to them, and they needed to make a choice, and that gave them the additional reason to go out and vote for him. I mean,
but that's why Slotkin did the Democratic response was that she was like, I won in a state where Trump won. No, you won because we saw this phenomenon across the board. The voters that Binder is talking about, they just came out, voted Trump, and left the rest of the ballot blank.
Right.
Who do we get on the Democratic side that will do that, but also uplift our candidates down ballot as well? The candidates down ballot were on their own.
Right. Trump does. Wait, go ahead, Matt. I don't want to interrupt you while you're saying I'm exactly right.
I was going to say, you're exactly right about the apolitical nature or the semi-political or the barely tuning in nature of these voters. And it's exactly why people like Jamel Hill at The Atlantic should be ignored when they want to ascribe it all to some sort of newfound love for white supremacist Nazism. This is about things like rent prices and grocery prices that liberals are that have college degrees are insulated from, and they lost a fucking election about it. And to hear people that just want to keep saying it's about the pathologies within the people that won't vote for us. Well, those people have no solution to that, even if it is true.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I do think there is a rise in white supremacy because you can see it, but it's still not enough that's why he won. He won because exactly the reasons you said, Matt. Yeah.
It's because of what we're saying about you let unions just destroy, which are a civic sort of in terms of besides getting people's wages up, are a civic organization node. Yeah, those go away. People's material livelihoods go through the floor, particularly minority communities. And guess what? You're going to see more social pathologies. How do you address those? It's not more specific messaging towards identities. It's a broad-based policy agenda that helps working people regardless of who they are.
Yeah, and people forget that in the rise of Nazi Germany, before the Nazis took power, there was also the rise of the Communist Party in Germany. And then eventually the Nazis ended up, obviously, targeting leftists. But you see this throughout history when there are extremist political movements that rise up. It is from those poor conditions for the most part. And there are often alternatives that get crushed, like we saw with the Bernie movement here in the United States.
Or the Green New Dream, or whatever Nancy Pelosi called it.
Yeah, I made fun of that. Go ahead, Bradley.
I don't want to go back too far, but I just wanted to, can I just say something that I'm curious what you guys think about what Cuomo said about the DSA being anti-Semitic? Like, it's sort of like a dual loyalty thing for it that I see, where it's like someone saying that they are crusading against anti-Semitism is someone also trafficking in anti-Semitism, because like I feel like him saying that is also because what you mentioned, Emma, that like there are a lot of Jewish people involved in these movements. It's Cuomo's, I feel like it's sort of instinctively is saying that basically either those are token Jews in those movements, or
Bad
basically
Jews.
they're traitors to their religion.
They're bad Jews.
They're right. They're bad Jews. Like they're literally like they're going against their own faith by
It's a
acting.
less
Zionist is
crude-
an anti-Semitism
Yes.
ideology.
It's a less crude form of what Trump does by calling Chuck Schumer a Palestinian.
Right. That's why I find it almost even more grotesque than like sometimes even some more. I mean, not obviously out and out anti-Semitism is horrible and virulent. I just mean like seeing it from someone who is basically saying I'm like speaking for Jews.
Yeah.
And by basically saying those guys who have those political and ideological positions, they're either tokens who actually don't really matter in that movement, or they are like cutting against their creed. It just like is to me very, very like that to me is also one of the more like insidious things about him, beyond all the so many insidious things about him.
I mean, Biden, didn't he say, if you ain't Biden, you ain't black? I mean,
right, similar thing, right?
If, stuff all
you're not
the time.
right. You're not black if you don't
Yeah.
vote for Joe Biden, even if you are literally a black person who has legitimate problems with Joe Biden.
This is fundamentally why people hate identity politics, and not just like obviously like Chris Rufo's a Nazi, but like when when like black leaders in New York come and say, oh, we can't go against Eric Adams because it's racism. Anybody, regardless of their background, you're going to lose people on that. And this is what this party does over even trans issues. Democrats saw the North Carolina trans bill thing rebound to their effort like 8 or so years ago. And so they thought, oh, here's a winner. And the very second that it becomes not a winner for them, they run the fuck away from it. And it damages all these efforts really bad. And so like the Democrats earn all this hatred from this stuff, and they are playing with fire by having such shallow commitments to this stuff.
I totally agree. But let's while we're here, I did want to get to this today. This will be our final clip, number 5.
Also, hold on, wasn't his whole point of the DSA attack from the very top, his like all the things he listed that he attributed to DSA, though his purpose was to say how they don't get how politics works and how you have to work in the system and work together or whatever. Didn't he start with something like that? Does Cuomo not realize that like there's a good portion of the city council he ostensibly is going to be working with that are DSA? Like, how is he going to work within that system? I mean, we know what he's doing, but I'm just going to say even his own.
He's gunning for the Zionist vote
and money.
Okay, so let's last clip of the day. Just wanted to make sure we got to this. Earlier this morning, there was a vote to censure Representative Al Green for having the temerity to stand up to Donald Trump and stand up for his constituents who will be harmed by the Republicans' efforts to cut Medicaid, but from the DOJ end and right now, the CBO just basically said, even though they're claiming publicly that they're not going to cut Medicare, that to achieve the goals that they're saying in terms of offsetting the tax cuts that they want to provide for the rich, they need to aggressively cut Medicaid and Medicare to make that work. There is no way around it. So they're lying as they're attempting to do this. So that's why Al Green stood up and showed some mettle and stood in the middle of Donald Trump's address and said, you have no right to cut Medicaid. And this has been met with like wide praise by the Democratic base, but not by guys like David Axelrod. The Obama guys really know how to empower Republicans despite being in the opposition party. Here is David Axelrod, formerly of the Obama campaign, but now he's basically a CNN contributor, speaking about how horrible it is that Al Green chose to stand up for his constituents and break decorum.
David, can I just one other thing he said towards the end. He said, talking about Butler, and he talked about Mark Fogel and his mother being there, and how she'd come up at the rally, and that's why he had spent this time to free her son from prison. And then he said, I was saved by God, talking about being shot in Butler, to make America great again. I believe that. Now, the New York Times says at that moment, Nancy Pelosi leans over to Steny Hoyer and goes, oh, my God. What is a moment like that?
I'm sure that's an emotional moment that connected with a lot of people. I just want to, 160 years ago tonight, Abraham Lincoln gave his second inaugural address. He said, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. What a different spirit that was. And that was after a civil war. So it's one thing to mine our differences. It's another thing to try and heal our differences. And that is, that's the difference between real leadership and political expediency.
Would it have been healing to stand for Mark Fogel? Might have been.
No, I agree. You are absolutely right.
DJ Johnson.
I will do what you will not. Who? I will say, I think there were times when they should have risen. I think what Al Green did was despicable. I liked Alyssa Slotkin's speech. I think that's where Democrats should go. That doesn't obviate the fact that you shouldn't exploit our differences. You should try and solve problems and heal our differences. I don't see that inclination on the part of this president.
Okay. So he called Al Green's protest there despicable, and it's no shock that he liked Alyssa Slotkin's pro-Reagan, anti-Cold War speech, or whatever the hell she was talking about. I mean, which was a disaster. Holy moly. Can we pull up the names of the 10 Democrats that voted to censure Al Green in the House? Because this is who Axelrod is representing here. That's despicable. These are the folks that you need to be calling. Ami Bera I'm sorry, Binder. I want to read these. Ami Bera of California. Ed Case of Hawaii. Jim Costa of California. Laura Gillen of New York. Jim Himes of Connecticut. Chrissy Holohan of Pennsylvania. Marcy Kaptur of Ohio. Jared Moskowitz of Florida. Mary Glusenkamp Perez of Washington, and Tom Swazi of Long Island, New York. You could also call, if you want, Shamari Figures of Alabama, who just voted present. But the 10 Democrats that joined the Republicans to censure Al Green for protesting Donald Trump, they should be hearing from you. And some of them have town halls tonight, if I'm not mistaken. So here we go. Ami Bera, town hall tonight, a virtual one. My district office will be available to help people who need assistance with the federal government agencies, including backlogged veteran benefits, IRS refunds, issues with Social Security, and Medicare, and more. And then here's the number for the dial-in, 833-946-1558. And that's at 6 p.m. I'm not sure if it's Eastern time or probably Pacific for his constituents. So you can call in there. Hey, you can also call in here, especially if you're a constituent, to... where is it? It's right down there. How? Wait, can you say into the mic, Bradley? It's hard for me to see.
Just the number there is 855-731-4616.
For Houlihan.
For Houlihan's town
right.
hall, correct. In Pennsylvania.
So for her town hall in Pennsylvania, if you're a constituent, or call in there. Tell her, because how are we going to be supporting folks on Medicare and Social Security like that representative said, when you're shouting down the person who's actually doing politics to alert the country that Trump is doing that and cutting your Medicaid and trying to cut your Social Security and your Medicare. That is what doing politics is. You have to cut through the noise. You have to make a scene. Al Green said this, and I'm paraphrasing, but when he was asked about his reaction, he said, Trump has been using his incivility against our civility this entire time. Are we serious? Trump called Elizabeth Warren for no reason Pocahontas while she was just sitting there in the middle of his address to Congress. He throws out slurs on the regular. He's tweeting out AI videos of colonizing Gaza.
People like that stuff.
But
not the content of it, but people like the lack of manners. Who gives a fuck about manners?
Because people hate the establishment of both parties. So when you look like you're standing up to either one of them, it actually gives you a benefit. But it's scary for guys like Axelrod because he prefers the Alyssa Slotkin thing. They want to be maintenance people as opposed to folks that actually change and rock the boat. But this is the consultant thing that we're hearing.
I mean, let's be clear.
Right.
The people like Axelrod and the Democrats, the 19 Democrat senators that voted for the crypto relaxation, they've already capitulated. They're ready to adjust to the next sort of political reality that comes after Doge. They are ready for it. They're ready to sell it to their donors. They are preparing for it. And the only hope we have is to bump as many of them out as possible. And it, I don't know if we can get Jeffries out, but we need to take some serious people down because they aren't, the reason they're not fighting it is because they've accepted it.
Yeah, and I just want to correct myself because we put up a town hall that already happened yesterday on Wednesday. But this is another one, right? Tom Swazi 22 hours ago. So March 6th, that's today. Tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Tom Swazi hosting a town hall. You can call in, dial in at 855-962-1154 if you want to give him a piece of your mind. So Binder, sorry about that. I just wanted to get all that information out there for folks.
No problem. I was going to add that don't forget that Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the Democrats in the House.
Yeah.
And he apparently gave them no official recommendation on how to vote on that. He basically, didn't make sure that Democrats were lock in step in literally defending one of their own who stood up to Trump. So I think he bears some of this blame too. I mean, obviously the 10 who voted to censure him, Al Green, are all to blame on their own. But Hakeem Jeffries was missing in action as the supposed leader of the House Democrats.
Yep. So I think even if you aren't one of the constituents of one of those 10 people, you can still call the Capitol switchboard 202-224-3121. Give them a call and tell your member of Congress, I would like you to do what Al Green did. Why didn't you? Did you walk out of Donald Trump's address? Did you take the opportunity to stand up for Medicaid or health care or Social Security? Why didn't you do what Al Green did? 202-224-3121. Ask your member of Congress why they didn't stand up and walk out and make a show of standing up to Donald Trump, who's doing an authoritarian takeover of many parts of our government, is trying to immiserate many, many people who rely on our already threadbare social safety net so that his crypto buddies and he can get rich. Ask your member of Congress why they didn't do that, and then say, I wish Al Green was my representative, or acts like his would be deployed more by the Democratic Party. And that's my recommendation here, because if we don't use our voices, the consultant class represented by that perspective laid out there by David Axelrod will win the day, and we can't have that. So,
it's amazing because Al Green isn't some hardcore leftist in the House. He's a Democrat.
Yeah.
But he stood up, and the Democratic base, as far as I could see, broadly reacted positively to this. They've been dying, it seems like to me, for someone, because this is all Democrats have really at this right now. These symbolic actions to just show that they care and they're going to fight.
Right.
But so many of them can't even do that. They can't even muster up the care, to show that they care, let alone act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sort of opportunity for the left here, which is that even standard Democrats, there's no alternative. You have to go. If not DSA route, at least massively progressive. And like Al Green, I think he said something good about. Didn't he have some good response to Jan 6 or something like that? I'm trying to remember.
He's, I would say, better than the average Democrat, which isn't. But he did. He said some good stuff about Gaza and things like that. But
right. That's what a Democrat should be. It's the only reason that isn't the norm is because a lot of them are corrupt and bought by corrupt interests.
But to Binder's point, he's not a DSA member or anything like that. But even, I returned. Matt had this thought that you said about Jeffries versus Pelosi and how Pelosi still does partisanship even when we hate so much of some of what she does, or blocking AOC for chair. And I'm not lionizing her here. But she did her political career preceded Citizens United and the unleashing of money in our politics that has happened over the last 15 years. And
she's a politician, where Jeffries is a investor relations guy.
And right, and so she actually was just like a better fighter in general, right? And you have to wonder, like, some of these new crops of Democrats, they're just entirely neutered because they came into political office during an age where corruption has basically been legalized, and we see the end point of that, which is a literal billionaire being the shadow president, the richest man on earth, looting our government for his ends. This is the Citizens United presidency. This is the privatization and the corruption presidency. This is what we have wrought because we haven't addressed so many things, but including our campaign finance system.
All right. You'll get no pushback for Pelosi love from me.
I know. Well, we're glad we had you on. I wouldn't talk badly about your girl while you're here.
It's true though. Like, she was better at doing the job than Jeffries, and honestly, she does have better politics than Jeffries. I mean, I know people might be hard to believe for people, but Pelosi, for who she was actually more in line with what a Democrat should be than the current slate of a lot of Democrats. Like, honestly, the current slate of like the vast majority of what we got in Congress right now. So, I think we're going a little bit backwards here, honestly. I mean, even when you look strictly at the Democrats, it's bad.
Well, that should put the accelerationism theories to rest, right? Because I was told by some folks after 2016 that Trump would be better for the left because we would elect a Bernie or Elizabeth Warren in 2020. It looks like our whole country is backsliding into a right-wing reactionary moment, as is the party. So,
I mean, the Bernie movement itself came after 8 years of Democrats in power. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
It tells you, yeah, right. Being in power is the only thing that really matters. And messaging.
Because these liberals take every bit of wind in the sails that they get from Republicans in office, they spend it on their corrupt interests.
Yeah.
Democrats literally took all of the capital they got from the Roe versus Wade thing that was still carrying over into the general, and they sent it on an aircraft carrier and gave it to Bibi Netanyahu to fire it at Palestinians.
It's like that's a summary of the last 3 years, actually, between the midterms and the election. That's what happened.
Yep.
I mean, October 7th happened, and then we did a genocide, and all the people that would have had like the moral standing to vote for Democrats because of abortion were like, I'm staying home. Also, why are my eggs so expensive, and why can't I afford my rent? It must be the people in power.
And what are you actually doing about abortion rights besides hoping that we can, get one of these Supreme Court justices to die if you win an election again? Like, Biden looked at the midterms and saw it as confirmation that their resigned sort of play dead approach to Roe versus Wade being gutted was the correct one.
Yeah. All right, guys. Sorry, no more time for calls. I'm sorry for keeping people on the line. We'll take some calls tomorrow, I'm sure.
Wasting your minutes on the majority report.
I know. I'm an asshole. Tater Tot says, thanks to Matt for letting me know about the event with Fateh and Wansley this past Saturday in Minneapolis. It was great to meet him, and I plan on canvassing for him. Fateh will also probably be reaching out to come on for an interview.
Oh, that's awesome.
We should do that. Tom Lofink, happy Majority Report Day. Here in Britain, just before Trump's address to Congress, a Trump ally went on BBC's current affairs show Newsnight and started out by berating the host for interviewing supposedly far-left Democratic Congresswoman Delia Ramirez just before him. Oh my God. Also, Emma, how do you feel about the fact that you hurt Tim Pool's feelings so badly he sponsored a NASCAR and deliberately sabotaged it? We did see that car, which was very funny.
Hey, what happened? I missed this.
Yeah.
Tim Pool's sort of like semi-pro NASCAR car crashed. There's a Timcast car and it crashed.
Oh,
I think we played it on the show actually last week.
We did.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason Minnesota says kind of missed in no more calls. I'm sorry. We're trying our best.
240.
We got a lot of people. Yeah, it's 240, and especially when we have a few more voices, so everyone we're trying to balance it all. I apologize.
Oh, I see the video now, which the title is amazing. You guys really did a number here. Does Tim Pool's NASCAR have bald tires?
I think we stole that from a even more clever IMer, or at least repeated it. They may have said it in that video. Well done.
The tires on his NASCAR don't have the ridges in it. It's just completely smooth all the way around. That's why it crashed.
Yeah. Ryan in California, Axelrod, Lincoln gave his second inaugural during the Civil War, you effing tool. Kentucky leftist, Emma, this is why I only recommend you and Francesca Fiorentini, the women I know. My sister is gay and your advocacy is powerful. The emotion you've shown before really cuts through and how much you really care. Furthermore, social politics are nothing without class analysis. That's why the Gillibrands, Kasparians, and tons of other libs of the world miss. You cannot build a winning coalition without a class analysis. Keep up the work. Good work, MR. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. That's what intersectionality is. It's an inclusion of all of those things together. And I may be clumsy about it, but sometimes I try to, at least I try to put forward an intersectional analysis that includes class, race, gender, all that. Springtime for Elon says, I'm a religious anti-Zionist Jew surrounded by Zionists in my community. Anytime I talk with friends about aligning with the left, they respond with, they need you as a token, but if no one was watching, they'd take any opportunity to murder you. It's just such a juvenile take. I think that is how they feel, those committed Zionists. But they're wrong, and they're brainwashed. They are completely brainwashed. Progressive Blob 2028, Slotkin, I am CIA. I've worked in many nations. Reagan was and still is my hero. He defeated the USSR. It had nothing to do with decades of embargoes and the communist governments giving up peacefully. Did I mention I am CIA and have worked with many in many unnamed nations? Don't worry about where.
It's a future Chuck Schumer wants.
Emma's distant cousin, Andrew Cuomo. It's not sexual harassment. It's Italian affection. What are you going to say? My Nana was getting fresh?
I mean, that should, speaking of nanas, I mean, I don't see how the nursing homes during COVID don't become a major issue for this guy. I think if everyone just focuses on taking him down, because unlike last time, I don't think there's anyone coming close to Zoran. I think you don't have to focus on Adams. It's already been done. The damage is done on Adams. He's going to lose, hopefully, I think.
Yes.
Everyone needs to focus on Cuomo.
Yep. Penny in New Mexico. Emma, I'm grandma to 8 granddaughters. When I listen to you, I can't help but hope that they have the wisdom, strength, courage, and compassion you do. Thank you. That's really nice. Aww. Thanks for being nice. It's been it's kind of been a rough year, a rough week too. James from Sacramento. I live here in Sacramento, and the common knowledge is that Newsom is a man in his 50s who is still in his Regina George phase. California is not going to line up behind Newsom the way he thinks. Curious what you mean by Regina George phase. Basically saying he's a mean girl? Probably. I mean, that fits.
I think he's more in his Patrick Bateman phase, but that's just me.
Oh, he really is so scary looking.
I'm quite convinced he's West Coast DeSantis. Like, I don't think he has appeal outside of his state.
I agree.
I don't even think he has appeal in his state.
Yeah.
He's just there right now.
Antifa Lockhart. Thank you, Charlie Kirk, for reminding Democrats the only way to win is to remove people from your base who will most reliably vote for you. Anyone on the Dems, anyone else the Dems should drop? Gays, browns, blacks. Thank you, Charlie, for your winning formula. Nothing for anyone except the people who will never ever vote for you.
It's also funny because the whole premise is like, oh, you need to get back to, what do they say, like kitchen table issues. But like Democrats have no interest in actually doing that. Democrats like Gavin Newsom don't actually care about that stuff.
Yeah. Noel from San Francisco, he should have RFK on and they can see who has the most gurgly voice. Midwest Ranch says, I know it feels like 3 years since it happened, but I'm a new member and I just want to thank you, Emma, for the coverage the day after the election. It made me feel less alone and was cathartic crying with another woman even from far away. All of the work the MR crew has done has helped me keep pushing and organizing to bring my community together. Love you guys. Left is best. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Everyone's being so nice today. Justin Trudeau. I think for security purposes, the Canadian government should invite the DPRK to place nuclear weapons near Winnipeg, Canada to deter a MAGA invasion. It worked for my father to prevent the invasion of Cuba. It can work for Canada. Thanks, Justin. Okay, 5 more. Nancy Mace, hi Emma. I'm a constituent in Chrissy Holahan's district in Pennsylvania, and I'd like to help in an effort to unseat her. I'm thinking about organizing people to canvass against her, but I don't know where to start. Do you have any suggestions? Justice Democrats, apply. Seriously. Also, Soykot had a bunch of suggestions in our interview yesterday, did he not? Like about where to start? I don't have them at the top of my head, but I would encourage you to check out some of the resources that Soykot...
It's at his website, which is in our show notes.
It's in our show notes from yesterday. So check out those links. But that's exciting. That's awesome. Need more people engaged like this. Justin Taylor, my representative Derek Van Orden has recently made threats to a fired VA employee who is a disabled veteran for criticizing the president. If you're in Wisconsin, please call him to let him know what a giant POS that he is. Also remember to vote Susan Crawford on April 1st. We cannot lose the state Supreme Court. Okay, there you go. Good reminder about Wisconsin. That's a very important fight. Rob from Dedham, I want to shout out Michelle Wu, who did excellent in her testimony yesterday. She's facing Bob Kraft's idiot son, Josh Kraft, in the mayoral election this year. She's leading in the polls, but Josh Kraft has a lot of money behind him. Yeah, the Krafts are huge Zionists. Like, Robert Kraft started a really, really stupid stand up to hate propaganda campaign that has been littering the NFL media for a while, which is just a Zionist front. That Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg willingly participated in with ads. So either way, just definitely do not want the Krafts unseating Wu. And I know she's had some issues and maybe hasn't been like the most progressive mayor, but it's a marked improvement over a guy like him. So support Michelle Wu in that race. Dave from the Bay, Newsom is way too smug and way too much of an elitist. I don't see how he would carry the Midwest in the presidential election. Two more. Kurt Cobain, I know Andrew did many despicable things, especially during COVID, but I think the worst thing no one really mentions anymore is how he wore polo shirts with his nipples poking right through.
With his pierced nipples, that was scary.
Yeah, oh, right.
What the fuck was that about?
Yeah. I mean, he's freaky.
Psychos.
Yeah.
Freaks. I mean, no shame, but if you're...
But it's a little weird for Andrew Cuomo.
I know, that's the thing. It's like, if he's just a guy, fine. But
right.
Like, Andrew Cuomo.
It's like finding out like Joe Biden has a tramp stamp that says like baby slut on it.
If he started stretching his ears or something like that.
There's this video I was reminded of recently that I had found and posted back when I was going after Cuomo when he was still in office, of him harassing this reporter at some event, demanding that she like ate this hot dog like in front of him. Very weird. He's obviously making sexual innuendos. It's the most bizarre thing ever. I got to find that video and like
I had heard from people that knew him or worked with him prior to all of this that he was the creepiest, the biggest bully, that he was very difficult to work with. It was well known in the state that he's a piece of garbage. And then the allegations came out and proved it. And now, he's trying to run for office again. The final I am of the day, John from Colorado, last minute plug, but there's a rally tomorrow supporting scientific research funding like the NIH and NSF, both in DC and a bunch of other state capitals. Google Stand Up for Science Rally for details. Check that out, folks. Stand Up for Science Rally. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you all. We will. Oh, Binder, what's happening on your shows? We didn't get to do a little plug. Earlier.
Oh, we just did the. We watched. The leftist mafia folks joined me to watch the Trump's address the other night. So we watched that. You can check that out at youtube.com/Matt Binder, and then we'll be live tonight. We're bringing you the usual Thursday night show. So check that out.
Awesome. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.